Today I'm going to show you how to make my version of a bougainvillea flower. I've opted for this white and green colour combination, but there are lots of other colours out there, so do have a look on Google or somewhere at the different varieties. And they typically have 3 central flowers, which can be in different stages of bloom, and then 2 to 3 bracts on the outside, which look like a standard sort of petal. And so I've gone for a white and then just dusted in a little bit of green to give a bit of definition in there. So I'm going to start off by making the central flowers. So I have some 28 gauge wire here, which I've cut into quarters, and a small knife, my Dresden tool, cell pin, some corn flour, a small pair of scissors, egg white, and then I have my flower paste, a cell pad, and a foam drying pad as well. So I'm going to begin by just pinching off a tiny bit of paste. Say this is about a small pea-sized amount. Just want to work it in between your fingers. I'm actually going to take it a tiny bit smaller. And so the flowers will be in different stages of bloom, so I'm going to vary how I make these slightly. I'm going to start off by rolling it into a sausage and then putting my finger in the centre just to roll it into a sort of slightly bone shape, like that. And then I'm going to have a flower blooming from the top, so I'm just running the back of my knife along the sort of top bit, just to separate this bit out. Oops. So you can see it's like that. And then I'm going to take my cell pin and into the little ball at the end that I've just made, I'm going to go in through the top and insert the cell pin to create a little hole. And then I'm going to take my scissors and snip little cuts to create the petals around the little ball. Like that. And then I'm going to take my cell pad, and each of the little snips that I've just made, I'm going to pull out with the edge of my Dresden tool to make the petal. And then I've just flipped it over and I'm working the petals from the other side on the back to make the flower nice and open. And that's just created that sort of shape. So now you can go in again with your cell pin and just make sure to reinsert the hole, because it might have disappeared whilst you were flattening out the petals. And then I'll take a 28 gauge wire, dip it and insert it into the bottom end away from the flower, and then poke it up towards it. You don't want to go as high as the flower. I'm probably going to about 2/3 of the way up here. Okay, and I'm just pinching it to secure it onto the wire and slightly thinning the bottom end. Now I'm going to take my Dresden tool, and I've got the narrow end of the Dresden tool here, and I'm just going to make a line down the side to create an indent, and I'm going to do that 3 times along the edge here, just rotating it slightly, leaving a bit of a gap and doing another line. And if you look at close-up pictures of bougainvillea, you'll be able to see this detail. It's really helpful to look at pictures for making this flower, just so you can see how the anatomy is. And I'm just now taking the wider end and running back down the lines that I created the first time round. And then I'm just going to pinch and shape the end a bit more. And if anything kind of goes a bit wonky whilst you're making it, you can just go in with your fingers and reshape it. And if you feel you need to reshape the flower again, you can do that. I'm going to add an extra bit of definition to the flower to finish off. So I'm going to run the narrow end of my Dresden tool down the middle of each petal just to give it a bit more definition. Okay, so that's my finished flower. I'm going to make another one now to show you. And I'm going to zoom in a bit so that hopefully you can see a bit better. So take a small pea-sized amount. And I'm rolling it out to create a sort of bone shape. And then at the end of the flower, I'm just going to take the back of my knife and start to mark out sort of ball at the end. So I'm just twisting and marking with my knife until it's nice and defined, like that. Then take my cell pin, insert it into the end to create a little hole. And then I'm just going to snip little snips all the way around to create some little petals. There's like a few millimetre in between each snip. And then take a cell pad and just flatten these snips that you've created to create nice delicate petals. And once that's opened out, you can do the same on the back. And I'm now just going to reinsert the hole. And then I'm going to take my 28 gauge wire, dip it in some egg white and insert that about 2/3 of the way up. You just kind of reshape it and pinch it onto the wire. And now I'm going to take my Dresden tool and run a line down here to give it some definition. So I've done 3 lines with the narrow end. I'm now going to go over with the wider end and mark it again. Okay, I'm just going to reshape. And I just want to close this bit up a bit more, so I'm just going to go in with my knife and give that a bit more definition. So I'm using the back of the knife here, so it's not going to chop the end off. And I'm just going to add a bit more definition to the petals with my Dresden tool again, using the narrow end. Again, if you look at pictures of Bougainvillea flowers, you'll see the detail that I'm trying to imprint here. Just going to go in one final time to open up this hole in the centre. And that's that one finished. So I'm then just putting it in a styrofoam block to dry. And for the third one, I'm going to go for a more closed flower. So I'm going to take a small pea-sized amount again. Do the same process of rolling it into a sort of bone shape. And then I'm going to insert my wire so it's about a third of the way up. And I'm now going to do the same lines with my Dresden tool. So I'm going in with the narrow end, and then I'm going to go over with the wider end. And then I'm going to shape it at the bottom to slightly narrow it. And just add a little bit of definition at the end as well. And that's that one finished. So I've made 3 for one flower, or one arrangement there. So now we move on to making the bracts. So I'm now going to make the bracts to go along with the flower. And I don't have the botanically correct cutters or veiners for this. So what I'm using is the smallest out of a set of 3 tree peony petals. So that's the one I'm going to use, and then I'm going to use scissors just to shape it slightly. And then I just have a sunflower sugar art leaf veiner here, which has quite a good definition on it, and I'm going to use that as well. So I'm just going to take some paste, and this is just plain white paste. Just give it a bit of a knead to bring it together. And then I'm going to put a little bit of white veg fat on my veining board. And I'm going to roll out 3 bracts. So I've just lined that up on the vein with the pointed end at the top of the vein. I'm going to do the same again 2 more times. I'll put the excess paste away. And then I'm just going to take my small scissors and I'm going to shape the bottom slightly to give a slight heart shape. And I'm going to vary the shape slightly on each petal, on each bract. Then I've got 28 gauge wire again here. Just dip it in my egg white and insert that into the vein of each bract. Give it a bit of a pinch to secure it. Okay, and now I'm just going to thin each bract. Using my ball tool. It's quite warm in the studio today, so everything can be a bit sticky. So I'm really concentrating on the edges here to get them nice and thin. Now I'm going to press each of them into my leaf veiner. Like that. And then finally I'm going to go back with my ball tool and just thin the very edge again so that the vein doesn't show right to the edge of the bract. And it's also just getting it nice and thin at the edges. Then I'm going to pinch the bottom and lay them upside down on my foam pad here. You sort of want this outer edge of the bract to be pointing away, so I'm going to shape that bit up like so. But you can vary the position that you dry them in. So this one I'm going to go a bit flatter. Okay, so we'll leave them to dry and make some leaves. So to make my leaves, I've got the same tree peony petal cutter here, and then one from a rose petal set, which I'm going to use as well. And I have some green paste, which I have coloured with avocado and spruce green. So it's quite a nice medium green here. And then I have some just standard rose leaf cutters, which are a little less defined than the one I use for the bracts. So I'll just put a bit of veg fat on my board. I'm going to roll out 2 leaves to show the different sizes. Now from looking at pictures of Bougainvillea leaves, they do seem to vary in shape quite a bit. So you can probably have a play around with the shape of these. But the one that I'm trying to imitate has this sort of shape, so that's what I'm going for. So I've just lined that up with the vein and cut it out. Do the same for the smaller size. And then I have some 26 gauge wire for the leaves here. I'm just going to dip in a little bit of egg white and insert that into the vein. I'm going about halfway. Just pinch to secure. And then I'm just going to thin them with my ball tool or with the end of my rolling pin here. And then I'm just going to press them into the veiners. Okay, now I'm just going to pinch, and I want to just vary the shape of each leaf. So again, getting my foam pad, I'm just going to lay them in different positions. If you look at pictures, some of the leaves are quite curled, so you can have a play around with different ways of drying them. I always think a good pinch at the bottom helps to give it some shape. So I'll leave those to dry now, and then I'll come back for dusting and assembling in different ways. So I'm going to use 3 colours for my dusting. I've got Rainbow Dust Spring Green, Squire's Yellow, and then a sort of medium green that I have here in my palette. And I'm just going to take a small amount of each onto my plate. And I'm going to start off by dusting the flower. So I'm going to take some of this spring green and mix it with the yellow to create a much nicer, brighter green. It's quite pale in colour as well. And I'm going to dust all the way up this bottom part of the flower, up to where the head is. And then I'm going to go in with some yellow on the top of the flower. I'm concentrating mainly on the centre, so leaving the edges a bit white. And then I'm going to make a slightly darker green to mix with the yellow and just pop that in the very centre, just to darken it slightly. And then with this darker green, I'm just going to add a little bit of depth of colour to the base and the top to give it a bit of variation. So just like that, and I'll do the same on the other ones. So to get your colours right, I really recommend looking at pictures, as always. And it just helps with your colour matching and trying to achieve a natural look. So I'm going to go in with the yellow. And a tiny bit of green. Just concentrating on that centre bit for the green. And then a bit of the darker green again, just to give a bit of depth of colour. Okay, and then the final one. So this is the one that hasn't quite bloomed yet. So I'm just going to concentrate on the bottom for this one and leave the top white. Might put a touch of yellow just at the very top. Like that. And then moving on to the bracts, I'm going to take the same kind of limey green and just follow some of the veins. So you're really concentrating, just zoom in a bit. Concentrate exactly where you can see the veins. So you want quite a fine brush to do this. And I'm not going right to the end, I'm just starting from the centre and working out and gradually sort of fading it out. And then I'm going to do the same on the back. So you're just trying to define some of the veins here with a bit of colour. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of the darker green just at the base. Again, this just gives it a nice depth. And the same on the back. I'll do the same with the others. And now move on to the leaves. For the leaves, I'm going to take some darker green and then I'll lighten it up with some yellow. So I'll just take a bit of this yellow here, just work it in. I find that this creates quite a nice vibrant green. And I'll just dust it all over onto this leaf. Do the same on the back. And I'm brushing off any excess dust, and then I'm just going to take a bit more of the dark green and just add some touches to just give a bit of depth of colour again. And then I'll just spray that with confectioner's glaze, and then it's all ready for assembly. I'm now ready to assemble my flower. So I've got my 3 central flowers here and then 3 bracts. And I've just lined these up so they're all nice and level at the bottom. And I'm going to take some green floral tape and leave about 1 centimetre from the base of the flower and just tape these 3 together. So I've just gone around a couple of times, and then if you were just going for 2 bracts, then you would just position them either side, and then you can have quite a closed appearance if you like. I'm going to attach 3, so I've left a little bit of length, about 1 centimetre again, of wire, and I'm just going to position these neatly around the central flowers like that. And then once you're happy with the positioning, actually I'm just going to tape a tiny bit further down. So I'm just giving it another couple of twists. And then I'm going to position them again. Just keep moving them around until you're happy with the shape. And then you can just tape down the rest of the stem. And just move them around again. So like that. So I've got a few other flowers that I've prepared here, and a selection of leaves. And I'm now going to tape them to a 22 gauge wire, which I've covered in green floral tape. All of the stems I've already covered in green floral tape. So I'm going to take a longer length of my tape. And I'm going to start off with a small leaf at the end. So you can really play around with the positioning of these. This is by no means the only way to do it. But I'm working from a picture here to try and imitate this particular spray. So I've just taped a smaller leaf onto the end, and I'm going to have another one coming off just a little bit further down. And I'm going to have a larger leaf now, just here. And then I'm going to take two of my flowers and attach these together with about that much length of the stem showing. And just grab my wire cutters. I don't want this stem to be too thick, so I'm just going to thin it out as soon as it's secured. And then I'm going to attach this onto the main stem. So I'm going to have it sticking out about there. And then I'm going to attach these three together. So again, I'm leaving a bit of a gap at the top of the stem. And I'm going to have these three sort of branching out from each other. I think I'm just going to add in one more leaf before adding in. I'll go for a small one. Oops. So now I'm going to attach this spray. And just have a play around with the positioning again. So I now have a couple more leaves, so I'm going to attach these at the base. And obviously it will really depend on where you're going to place your spray on the cake as to how long you go with this. So you could have quite a short arrangement or a longer one. And obviously depending on how you're going to be arranging it on the cake, if you need a sturdier wire, then use a thicker one. I've just used 22 here. So I think I'm happy with that. So you can just move them around into position until you're happy. And that's your finished spray of Bougainvillea.